Dun, dun, dun.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Off the Dome Sports Podcast, your favorite sports podcast where two and sometimes three sports lovers sit and give their hot takes.
Off the dome.
I am Redfish,
I am Mustang.
And I'm Rebo Hustle.
and we are the OTD boys coming at you today. We will be steering the ship. Mustang, how we doing?
Doing good. Well rested.
Well rested indeed. That is what I have been doing all day. Shout out to Louisiana State University for losing power. Got an off day. Shout out. How we doing, Rebo?
Still recuperating from last work week, and I go back tomorrow.
The life of a hustler. Specifically the Kenny kind. Slam Diego, how's the Padres?
Another oof.
Good point. You know who's not oofing right now? The New
Hassan
Orleans
Kim.
Saints. Oh, okay. This guy.
We all went different directions.
Yeah, we did. No, the New Orleans Saints. We're going to get right into it, but before we do that, we would like to thank, of course, our boys at Be in the Know. Be in the Know on Twitter, the Know Network. If you don't know, now you know. We are having a giveaway right now on Twitter for some free Saints tickets for the Texans game. So if you want to be a part of that giveaway, make sure to go on Twitter. Go on the Be in the Know account on Twitter. You'll see all the rules. Fairly simple. You just follow us. You follow Be in the Know. You follow our boy Marcelo, and then you retweet the tweet. Only 4 steps, and all it takes is a couple seconds to retweet, and then press a couple follow buttons, and you'll be entered for some free Saints tickets against the Texans for that game on Saturday. So
Yeah, I mean, why not? You know, it helps us out. It helps yourself out because you have a chance at winning free tickets.
who doesn't want Saints tickets?
Right.
Like, why not? What do you have to lose?
Nothing. It's free.
So you might as well go for it. So make sure to do that either right now, do it after the pod, do it anytime before then. So again, follow us, follow our boy Marcelo_Unda, and then follow at Be in the Know on Twitter, and then or X as it's called now, and then make sure to repost it. So
I'm gonna have to get used to that.
yeah, I'm not used to it.
Shout out Elon.
You've never had Twitter anyway, so why do you care?
Still won't.
Yeah, no, of course you won't. But like I said, the New Orleans Saints 2-0 in the preseason.
Hello.
Gotta love it. Our starters had their day off. None of them really saw the field. Nobody who we expect to be a starter, other than maybe a couple people a couple times. But for the most part,
A couple people a couple times.
maybe.
Maybe.
That's why I said maybe, because I don't really know. We saw Trevor Penning, who we expect to start at left tackle. He was playing a little bit. O-line and D-line are going to get their time in during the preseason, just because you have to figure out the rotation. But other than that, it was a day for all the backups to shine. So, boys, why don't you tell me what you saw?
Okay. Well, I'll start by saying I saw a big improvement from last week to this week with Jake Haener. He played kind of the second half of the game, getting reps in the preseason. Always a good look for him. But actually did much better this game than last game. No picks. Big plus. He went 11 for 17, threw for 118 yards, an average of 6.9 yards per pass. Big upside from what we saw last week when, he could tell he was struggling out there through that pick. And, of course, Drew Brees blamed it on the receiver being a quarterback. But other than that, Kendre Miller looked really, really good. We didn't see too much of him, but he looked explosive, right? Like, he wasn't making those long runs, but when he was in the game getting those handoffs, he was, like, top speed within, like, 2 or 3 steps. Love to see it. He got himself a touchdown, handed it to him. I think it was, like, 1st and goal.
Also got, like, the biggest highlight of the game, the diving catch on the sideline.
Yes.
Like, me and Redfish were just, like, questioning, like, he didn't really catch the ball in college, and, like, that's, like, the one question mark is, like, we need a receiving back while Kamara's gone. Is he capable of doing that? And then 2 seconds later, he's diving, and we were just like, oh, yeah, he can.
Yeah, Jamal Williams obviously is that power back in short yardage situations. We know that from his time with the Lions last year. Not only did he rush for over 1,000 yards, but he had a league-leading 17 touchdowns. All of those pretty much coming from within the 5-yard line. So we know Jamal Williams is going to be that in-between the tackles guy. So the question was, what does Kendre Miller bring you outside of that? And I think that was easily answered during this game. If you look at his the box score numbers, he doesn't look like he jumped off the charts too much as far as yards per carry or anything like that. But kind of like Mustang was alluding to there, it was more of like an eye test type game for Kendre Miller.
Right.
The O-line wasn't great. Our backup O-line did not play well, especially number 66.
We don't want to talk about him.
I know how much Rebo loves Lewis Kidd.
The less we talk about Lewis Kidd, the better off my mental is. So let's just move
But
on.
yeah, that backup O-line didn't look great. However, Kendre Miller made the most of it. He had a couple really explosive runs where he just found a hole, exploded through. And then, of course, the diving catch on the sideline. He showed he has that receiving prowess as well. So I really liked, what Kendre Miller showed us. We had some impressive receivers as well, but before we move on to those, I do want to talk about Jameis Winston, just because, I feel like Jameis is one of those guys where it's like he's the kind of the middle ground between a low-end starter, high-level backup, where there's probably 5 teams around the league who Jameis Winston could go and start for, and it would make sense. But I enjoy that he is on the Saints as a backup option. I know it was the preseason, but he threw, completed 13 passes for almost 100 and what is that? 100, almost 170 yards. He got sacked twice, but again, that O-line didn't look great. And he had quite a few times where he eluded sacks with the same move 4 times in one play.
I was waiting for you to finish. And I was going to get to the might be the only player in the NFL history to use the same juke move, and it worked 3 times in a row within 5 yards.
Yeah, just front shoulder dip and pull the back end, just that. It was very Dak Prescott-esque with the towel warm-up that he does pregame. But, our quarterback showed some decent stuff. Running back showed some decent stuff. But
that was weird. They're playing highlights.
Shout out to ESPN. They're playing highlights while we have the box score pulled up. Now you know the secrets. But no, let's talk about the receivers a little bit.
I liked how, it's getting to down to the nitty gritty. They're having to prove themselves, and they all have been proving themselves. We're trying to secure that spot on the roster. And it's looking at this list, it's tough to pick, like who you want to be that 4th or 5th guy, that 4th or 5th option coming off the bench. Because, I think A.T. Perry solidified his spot. And really there's only 1, maybe 2 more spots for a receiver to sneak in. And Shaq Davis and John Trey Kirkland were battling last game.
That was actually going to be my question I asked after we finished our preseason talk, so we'll just get into it now. I was going to ask you guys, it's been huge on Saints social media right now. It's like the Saints always go into the year with 6 receivers. Every single year we go in with 6 receivers. Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, A.T. Perry. Those 4 we know are making the team. I don't think that's a question. A.T. Perry's the only one who even draws somewhat of a maybe, but you don't put that draft capital into him not to have him.
Right.
So the next question is like, who are the next 2 guys up? I have my opinions. I'm sure you guys do too. Rebo, why don't you start us off? Who's those last 2 players?
So, before this game, I probably would have said Kirk Merrick and Brian Edwards just off of, what they've done. What have you done for me recently?
Mm-hmm.
And Brian Edwards had 4 targets and 0 catches, and he looked really bad. I don't remember much of the game, but I do remember him dropping several balls. And I almost want to say that he's no longer the guy.
He got waived today, so you don't have to worry about that. He had 2 drops in the red zone, 2 penalties in the red zone that got touchdowns taken away when we had that 9 plays straight where there was a penalty thrown in the red zone. So yeah, Brian Edwards has got waived today, so he is off the list.
And then Kirk Merrick, he didn't see many snaps. I don't know if that's because they wanted him to. They're like, oh, you already have the spot, or what it is. But John Trey Kirkland and Shaq Davis proved that they deserve to be on the roster. And personally, if I had to pick between the 2, I'm going with Kirkland because he's an LSU guy. But I don't have much of an opinion, for being honest.
Fair enough.
Yeah, between those 2, very similar stat line. Kirkland 3 targets, 3 catches. Shaq Davis 5 targets, 3 catches. Shaq Davis had 63 yards. Kirkland had 59.
Kirkland had a rush for 8 yards as well.
Kirkland did have a rush. Yeah.
Yeah, they did have him do his little jet sweep.
But yeah, it's kind of what and what at that point. I really can't be too decisive right now. Maybe next week, watching that final game, that final preseason game, seeing who wants it more, really. But as of right now, I'd probably lean towards Kirkland and maybe a Lynn Bowden.
Lynn Bowden, I think, is interesting because he's a former running back turned receiver. So he can do both. Like, he has the dynamic play to not only catch passes,
right.
but you just mentioned Jontre Kirkland had a rush. Lynn Bowden could do that as well, because he did play running back in college. But for me, I think it's gonna be one of Jontre, Shaq Davis, and Lynn Bowden. One of those guys will make it.
Yep.
And then the other guy who's not even on this list, who I think is gonna be on our team, is Keith Kirkwood. He did not play this game, and I think the reason he didn't play this game is because of what he did in week 1 in the preseason.
Open and drive touchdown.
He played with the ones. He looked really good. And when you're playing with the ones in the first game of the preseason, you go down on that Chiefs offense and you score the touchdown, the team's automatically like, okay, good. For me, I think when you see Brian Edwards not doing anything, he gets waived. That opens a spot for Keith Kirkwood because Keith Kirkwood. Talking is difficult. They're more of a similar type of receiver, the bigger, deep threat, red zone kind of guy. Right. Whereas Jontre and Shaq Davis are both more of the smaller, agile type. So I think that's the issue with keeping both of them. They're similar players.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I think Keith Kirkwood is going to be our 5th receiver. Behind A.T. Perry at 4, and then 6th spot, I would give Shaq Davis the edge just because of his return ability. I think
that's kind of why I was giving Lynn Bowden the edge. I think Lynn Bowden would be an excellent returner for this team.
Absolutely.
Play a similar role to what we saw Tommy Lee Lewis do a few years ago.
Don't mention that name.
But better, hopefully.
But Lynn Bowden and Shaq Davis, I think, and throw Jontre in there as well. All 3 of them are kind of on that line of like, whoever shows out in the last game and shows out in practice the most will end up making the team. And the thing about the Saints is we always keep them on the practice squad too.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I think we're probably going to keep 6 on the team. The 4 that obviously have cemented their spot, in my opinion. And then we'll throw Shaq Davis and Keith Kirkwood in there. And then hopefully we can secure Lynn Bowden, Jontre Kirkland, and Kirk Merritt on the practice squad to make sure we have people to come up when the inevitable injury does happen. The cool thing about having Kirk, Lynn, and Jontre all on there is all 3 have played different positions at some point in their career. Kirk was a running back / receiver last season. Lynn Bowden, same thing. And then Jontre, quarterback / wide receiver. So, gotta love that versatility.
Yeah, what you just said both threw me and Rebo for a loop there. But we get it now because you said Kirk, Lynn, and Jontre. And it sounded like you just said Kirkland, Jontre.
Oh, you thought I said Jontre Kirkland's name. Oh, I see.
Yes.
Hey, maybe that's a thing. Kirkland Jontre and Jontre Kirkland. All right. I now see where I may have made a mistake.
But yeah, I get it now. Yes, Kirk, Lynn, and Jontre. Yeah.
All right, moving on. Any thoughts, Rebo? You look like you want to say something.
Takeaway from the Chargers is that the box score says Quentin Johnson had 3 receptions, but I didn't notice them.
Yeah, to be fair, we didn't really watch like the second half too much.
There's no way he was playing the second half.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. Is like we didn't watch the second half too much, and we still didn't see him.
Yeah,
because he was probably running out first quarter, and we were watching the first quarter. So I don't really know. I didn't see him play at all either, to be fair. He had 3 catches on 3 targets.
I don't know. Pretty efficient, but I don't remember it.
I don't remember it either.
Yeah. I mean, we're
talking first round.
We were scrambling to get to a draft at the start of the game. could have been it.
Yeah,
Making some
that
phone calls.
That might have been it.
That is true. I forgot about the whole we were doing a draft during the game thing.
Yeah.
That definitely happened. But Easton Stick was fun, huh? Chargers quarterback Easton Stick, he was fun to watch.
If you're a Chargers fan, you disagree completely.
No, I just thought that was funny. Moving on from our offense to our defense, though. How
Yeah,
did you feel about our defense?
It's about to segue into this with, speaking on Easton Stick, our defensive line gave him a tough time.
Yeah. Scroll down a little bit right there if you don't mind. We can look at our defensive stats.
Hello.
Look at the man. Yeah, look at the man on top of that list. Nico Lalos. What a guy.
3 sacks from the boy.
3 sacks. Middle linebacker, too. I mean, he played outstanding. When you do something like that, is he not a middle linebacker? Did I make a mistake?
I don't know because he's wearing 54 for the Saints, and he has, but he played nose tackle in the USFL for the Sea Dragons.
Oh,
and so I'm not sure.
It felt like he was standing up a lot. That's why I said it. I could be completely wrong.
I mean, I'm pretty sure he's small enough to play backer, but he was playing nose guard.
I'm just going to click on his name and see what they have him listed as. Defensive end. So we were both wrong. Lovely. Either way, he played outstanding. Saw his name a lot. He was playing phenomenal. His name blew up on social media from the Saints side after the game just because, you have 3 sacks and 4 tackles for loss when a lot of people have never heard your name before. You're going to get talked about. So really, really interesting there. Anybody else on the defense stand out to you guys?
I was kind of more focused on watching the offense this game. So in between picks, I was looking up and really only seeing the offense out there. I kind of saw basically all I needed to see week 1 and how dominant, not only our first, but our second team was out there too. Really, I didn't focus much on the defense this week. And he's scrolling.
Oh, Peyton Turner had the sack that led to the fumble that led to Brian Brazee's recovery.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to figure out.
Yeah,
Peyton Turner did look good.
He did. Peyton Turner did look really good.
I was kind of impressed.
Yeah. Rebo freaked out when he saw Brian Brzee pick
with
up
the
a fumble.
ball. I was so happy.
He was unbelievably excited. I was very much not because I don't want to see him succeed. I'm just kidding. I do want to see him succeed. That was a joke.
Shame on you.
I just want to make Rebo mad. But no, Brian Brzee had the fumble recovery. Peyton Turner caused it. That's 2 first-round picks by the Saints that we sure hope end up working out for our defensive line.
Right.
After losing a former first-round pick in Marcus Davenport and David Onyemata, who's been a staple of this Saints defense for a really long time. So when you lose 2 former playmakers, you hope you gain 2 playmakers. And if Brian Brzee and Peyton Turner can be those guys with how young they are, you can't ask for much more out of those 2 guys. What you got, Mustang?
I was really just going to shout out our DBs that went out and got themselves a pick. Isaac Yiadom, I know. Lionel, big Isaac Yiadom guy.
Gotta love him.
And then Lonnie Johnson Jr. I love seeing this, man. Our DBs, we know we have good ones, and to see, the 2s and the 3s being this productive this early on in the season just makes me happy because especially when you look at the D-line going into the season, I know a lot of people thought.
I love our comment
The
section.
Twitch audio is working, by the way. I checked.
Oh, yeah, those are bots. I could have told you that.
I love our comment section.
What was this? Oh, yeah, so going into the season, a lot of Saints fans were thinking that the D-line is going to be, we're going to have to rummage to get some people out there for snaps. But now, going into these preseason games, I love how deep our D-line looks. Like constantly rotating in and out and still being that productive, big plus for me. Vape hit on that one.
This guy. The next thing I wanted to talk about was Jimmy Graham, We had that situation last week where, at first it came out, TMZ was like, Saints tight end Jimmy Graham has gotten arrested for, public disordinance or whatever, and there wasn't much coming out at first, and we were all just like, oh, shoot. Dude goes to L.A. for 3 days, and now he's getting arrested. Like, what just happened? And then after a couple hours, it started to come out that he actually had a medical emergency. They said he had a seizure, and then once recovering from that, he was really disoriented and ended up, like, stumbling out into the road, and that was kind of what caused the whole ordeal. After they arrested him, they brought him to jail, noticed he, medically wasn't okay, brought him to the hospital. He was released that night. So it was a lot to unpack. The whole story, I'm sure some of the details haven't been released of what actually happened, so we're not 100% sure. However, the reason I bring it up is because they did say that he should be back at practice tomorrow, recovering from his illness and his, whatever the case was. They did say he might have epilepsy, so that could be a part of it. I don't want to confirm nor deny that, so not really 100% sure. But, yeah, just a big, weird situation with Jimmy Graham going on.
Yeah, I mean, whenever we got that notification, it kind of took us all by surprise. We're all like, what the hell's happening? But it's good to know that, it's weird to talk about because, you want to say it's good to know that it was a medical emergency and not him being an idiot.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't want a medical emergency to be a good thing.
Yeah, when you get arrested, usually there's no good outcome of it.
Right.
Like, there's nothing good that went behind it, but I guess it is the better of the two evils.
Right.
Yeah, and, like, the big thing is, like, the fact that we got the report and then it went silent for a little while. Like, normally if it goes silent for a while, it has to do with medical because, like, that's confidential stuff. And so, like, I had a feeling after, like, an hour went by and no one else said anything about it, and there was no more information given out about, like, oh, he was doing ecstasy or whatever, and there wasn't that, and so I had a feeling that it could have been heat stroke or whatever because, like, California is California at this time of year, and they just had an earthquake, and they're about to have a hurricane. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you are the medical guy, so we're leaning on your expertise here.
Medical bill, some would say.
No. I couldn't be that good.
New nickname unlocked. Medical Bill. Any other thoughts on, anything you see coming out of this Saints preseason? Maybe what you're looking forward to in our final Saints preseason game? What you expect out of the 53-man roster?
That's a good one, Dustin.
The biggest
Shout out,
thing
Dustin.
is, like, we complained during the game, like, we've yet to see Foster. And, I mean, like, is he still just, like, trying to get back into football shape? Like, what's the real reason we haven't seen Foster? And maybe we'll see him on Saturday, and that would be amazing.
Yeah, I'm really confused why we haven't seen him. I mean, to be fair, Lucas Kroll was out there absolutely killing the game.
He was.
Showing some, like, highlight catches, to be honest with you. And he had a couple that got, called back because of penalties too. So his stat sheet doesn't show everything, but he played really, really well. We've seen Jimmy Graham a couple times, and then he has this medical emergency, so didn't play in L.A. We've seen Juwan Johnson. We've seen Jesse James, and we haven't seen Foster Moreau. And it makes no sense because this was a big-time signing. He's had a lot of publicity for overcoming cancer, which obviously you have to respect that. Whether he's in football shape or not, we haven't really heard why we haven't seen him either. And that's kind of the weirdest thing is not only have we not seen him on the field, we don't know why we haven't seen him on the field.
I'm no insider analyst, but it's probably taking him a good amount of time to get back into all the bots. It did. Him being away from football for a while, it's in my opinion, it can't just be like get thrown back into the mix. It's going to take a while for him to get back to 100%. And so that's why I'm hoping to see him this weekend coming up in the last preseason game. And, seeing some productivity out of him would be a great plus. But I think he'll stay on the team.
Like, the biggest thing is like, I don't know if Hodgkin's lymphoma requires like chemotherapy or anything like that, and like if that was the case, like that can drain you, and like just getting back to full strength after that can take months.
So, if you had listened to our favorite podcast, Bussin' with the Boys,
I haven't actually, and I'm upset about it.
Yeah, he did not have to do chemo or radiation. He was lucky enough to where he just had to do transfusions. And he talked about that, the experience of that when he was, up in the 9th floor of Benson Tower in the Cancer Center, doing the transfusions, looking out onto the, the city of New Orleans back home. So he did not have to do chemo or radiation, but obviously it's still a process. Whether you do that or not, he fought through one of the hardest things to fight through that we see in, today's medical world. So either way, I'm sure it's going to take some time to get back on the field. I would just like the Saints or him to just be like, hey, this is why I'm not on the field. I'm going to be on the team, or we're figuring something out or whatever. Because right now, it's hard to justify putting somebody on the team. Even though he's been through what he's been through, it's hard to justify putting somebody on the team when you have not seen them take a single snap.
Right. You're kind of just basing everything about, his previous season.
Which we know you cannot always do. Especially with a guy who's not even on the Saints, but Jonathan Taylor, right?
Good segue.
2 years ago, we weren't supposed to point out it was a good segue. It sounded professional, damn it. No, but 2 years ago, he was the best running back in the league. Everybody thought he was the next big thing. He was going to be, the Derrick Henry type back where everybody knows he is number one in the league. Christian McCaffrey type back. And then last year has some down, didn't play well when he was playing, and also wasn't healthy for most of the year. So he
missed a good, what was it, 14 weeks?
I don't think he missed that much. I think he played probably half the season.
I think when he got hurt early in the week, he didn't play the rest of the year. He sat out the rest of the year. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, he didn't play much, and when he did play, it wasn't great.
Right.
So it was a really weird experience with Jonathan Taylor going from like, oh, he is the next guy, to now everything that was happening with Jim Irsay. And yesterday, it came out that they are allowing him to
communicate,
to seek trades.
Seek is the word I was looking for. To seek a trade, him and his agent. So, what are your thoughts on Jonathan Taylor, and where might we see him go?
I think first of all, I think it's a good move from Mr. Irsay, who seems to be losing his mind right now. But to kind of give one of your players that little bit of freedom, it kind of shows a little trust and a little bit of professionalism. Like, I know you're unhappy. I'd love for you to stay with the team, but if that's not what you want most, then, here's your freedom. On the other hand, I think if Taylor can find a new team, he can get back to what he looked like 2 years ago, depending on which team he goes to, really. It's hard to say, but according to ESPN, Mr. Tim Hasselbeck expects Taylor to remain on the Colts. I really don't. It kind of went over pretty bad whenever things started happening, that it would kind of it would be hard for me to see this, making a full 180 and them going back to normal.
Yeah, I can see it to where like no one's interested right now, and like we get to like mid-season and a trade happens. But if it were to happen right now,
That's what I meant when I said he's losing his mind.
If it were to happen right now, I think the best fit is the Chicago Bears.
Really?
Wow. The Bears.
They've stepped up their offensive line in the past 2 years, because 2 years ago it was horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
They no longer have David Montgomery.
True.
Who was their workhorse guy. You need something to make sure that Justin Fields is gonna be able to move around in the pocket and actually pass the ball, because if you pass the ball every play, you're not gonna do anything.
Right.
And Khalil Herbert's good, but would you rather have Khalil Herbert or Jonathan Taylor if you're seeing like significant time.
No, yeah. Jonathan Taylor's definitely better than Khalil Herbert.
Right.
That is not debatable. My problem with the Jonathan Taylor thing comes in the actual trade of it, because there's two things that have to be a part of the trade. First of all, the Colts are requesting they get a first-round pick or a package that equals a first-round pick. So when you think about a first-round pick, a lot of teams are not giving up a first-round pick for a running back anymore.
Right.
I mean, we saw 2 running backs go in the first round this year, but that's because it was Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs who were seen as like generational talents at the running back position because of what they can do. In a typical year, you just don't see first-round running backs. Jonathan Taylor wasn't a first-round running back when he was drafted.
I mean,
Second rounder, and he was like setting records at Wisconsin.
yeah. You go back to Trent Richardson.
Oh, God.
Eddie
last
Lacy.
trade. Their last trade.
The Colts did trade a first-round pick for Trent Richardson. Jim Irsay is burnt.
That's probably why he wants the first in return, is because of the Trent Richardson trade.
Yeah.
But
feels like he has to make up for it.
Then another problem
Still, 10
is
years later.
you're asking a team to send you a first, then restructure the contract of Jonathan Taylor because he's on like the last year of his deal or something like that.
Yeah, that was going to be my second part of the trade is like Jonathan Taylor's going to want a new deal. Like that's
Whereas
why he's having a problem. Is
the
'cause he
Bears
wants
have
an
money
extension.
to do that.
They do.
So
Listen,
if it were
it
to happen,
would-
I think it would be the Bears.
it would make sense to be the Bears. I'm with you on that. I don't think it would be a bad move by the Bears by any means. Like securing Jonathan Taylor, give him a 3-year contract. That takes so much pressure off of Justin Fields. And I will be honest with, Clown Car, because I know he's listening. If the Bears get Jonathan Taylor, we're going to have to rework our
It's set in stone.
No.
I don't
We
know.
would
There
have
was
to
a handshake.
There was a handshake.
Yeah, but it
There
was
was a
based on the
handshake.
current roster. If they
No.
get Jonathan Taylor, that's different.
That was your fault for making a deal still in the offseason.
Yeah, before we.
I guess you're right. But no, I would definitely change my opinion on the Bears if they get Jonathan Taylor. I think he's that big of a deal.
Hello, Hot Chip.
Hello, Hot Chip.
Hot
indeed.
chip.
Hot Chip Lie, white Honda Civic. You know the drill. But yeah, Jonathan Taylor, like he is a difference maker. If he goes to the Bears, that's huge. I brought up a team yesterday who Lot also really enjoyed, and from my perspective, I think it makes sense too, and that's the Washington Commanders. The Manders, indeed. For me, it makes sense because Antonio Gibson has kind of always been that 1A guy, and he's never been good enough to be a 1A guy. It's just who they have. They bring in Brian Robinson. He ends up, getting shot in the offseason.
Still
Comes
making
back,
it back before Michael Thomas.
Yeah, comes back after 4 games. Plays really well when he did play last year. I mean, I think he had something like 800 rushing yards and had a couple touchdowns in there as well. He's a really, really good player. I really like Brian Robinson. But you throw Jonathan Taylor into that, and it's kind of like the same thing with the Bears, is they have an improved offensive line. You take pressure off of a young quarterback. Sam Howell being a second-year quarterback who's only started 1 or 2 games in the league. And then the Commanders, in my opinion, have not only a better defense, but a better receiving core to go along with that run game. I know Terry McLaurin just got hurt. He'll probably be out the first 2 weeks of the season-ish. They said there's an out chance that he makes it back by week 1. I doubt it. He'll probably be out for the first 1 to 2 weeks of the season. But you still have Jahan Dotson, who's a first-round receiver. You have Diami Brown, who we saw flashes of last season at certain points.
Mm-hmm.
He was sitting on my bench in fantasy for a reason.
Along with Curtis Samuel, who everyone counted him out.
Talk about flashes.
He went from barely making this team to being a number 2 receiver on that team.
Yeah, absolutely. So in my opinion, the Commanders are a great fit for Jonathan Taylor. And also, you bringing in Josh Harris, brand new owner of the Commanders. You're trying to create this new, basically a new history. I know that doesn't make sense, but you're trying to restart the history of the Commanders, create this new regime, new program in Washington. So the best way to do that is get a star-studded running back,
Right.
reshake this running back market that we've seen have so many problems over the past few years, and solidify yourself as a team that can make the playoffs. Because I think if the Washington Commanders can add Jonathan Taylor, they can make a playoff push.
Yeah, I mean, they are in a really tough division with the Eagles, Cowboys, and Giants. But with the addition of a player with the caliber like Jonathan Taylor, it's hard to not give them a chance, really. But I had kind of like two teams in mind. One of them, I think, if they were to do it, it would be before the season. One of them could be like beginning to middle of the season. First one, I think they'll do it before. If they take a shot at them, it'll be before the season. Would be the Rams. They got the money. They have. It's LA. They have everything, except a running back. We saw last year going into the season all this hype around Cam Akers. Then he didn't play.
Yeah, I mean, he had a similar situation. Jonathan Taylor kind of had this offseason where they were like, yeah, you're healthy. We need a running back, but you're just not playing. Like, you're just simply not going to see the field.
Mm-hmm.
And he had permission to seek trade as well. Never worked out. But the thing about Cam Akers is he did come in at the end of the season and ended up playing like really, really well over the last 4 weeks. So.
Yeah.
Lot and his dude. Never question Lott's fandom for anything.
Man is having a day right now.
He is. I mean, we're talking about the Bears and the Manders in one episode. He's living on cloud 9.
Like I was saying, if he goes to the Rams, I think it would be a good fit for him. They still have that pretty decent O-line. Their offense is coming back healthy this year. So Matt Stafford's coming back. Cooper Kupp's coming back. Kind of seeing them together kind of just, makes sense in my head. The other team that I could see doing it later on, maybe when the price drops. Last year we saw Christian McCaffrey get traded for nothing.
Yeah, I mean, and you would have to assume Jonathan Taylor would get traded for the same, if not less, than Christian McCaffrey.
Exactly.
Which would be like a third and a fifth.
Yeah. So I think, teams could wait around a little bit. My team that I have in mind is the Dolphins. There was a lot of talk about them picking up Dalvin Cook in this offseason. They kind of stayed away from it. He ended up going to the Jets. I think that they're playing the waiting game. If they can wait out everyone else, I think they'll secure him.
My only problem with the Dolphins, with Jonathan Taylor, is he doesn't necessarily fit the Mike McDaniel scheme. Just because I think the Dolphins are like a hand it off to the outside, throw short passes to the running back, let him get his they're more agile, speed-based, and while Jonathan Taylor is very fast, I'm not saying he's slow by any means, he's more of an in-between the tackles, going to run it up the gut. He can catch the ball, but he's not a receiving back, and I think the Dolphins are trying to implement that receiving back. But then again, does system really matter when you have a guy to the caliber of Jonathan Taylor? So I get it.
I think it does still matter, but I think that, with the amount of backs they have that could be potential starters in this league, adding Jonathan Taylor, that kind of just redevelops your whole game in Miami. It gives you that option to hand it off up the gut, which they haven't seen in a long time. Mostert's a receiving back, speed outside the tackles, and that's kind of everyone on their roster's whole shtick.
The old shtick.
And I think that adding, a running back like Jonathan Taylor who can do both those things, but more importantly, running up the gut, gives them that ability to be more versatile on offense.
I just think if he goes to Miami, if there's a team on planet Earth that doesn't have the money to re-sign him, is Miami. And then they have to deal with, you can't just run the ball up the middle because you have a back that's powerful, because the offensive line has one guy and he's a left tackle. The rest of them are just, I don't think they start on any other team.
He's probably going to be out for
at least
a
3-4
little
weeks.
bit of the season. So, yeah, their O-line is kind of their biggest question mark right now with the Dolphins. So, I mean, I get that. But I think all in all, we can all agree that Jonathan Taylor's, when healthy, is a top 5 running back in this league.
No doubt. Yeah.
So any team that has him is going to be lucky to have him. It's just, does anybody want to pay the price for him right now? I personally don't know if we'll see him get traded in the offseason, but I think come season's end, there's a small chance, probably 5% or less, that Jonathan Taylor's in a Colts uniform.
Yeah, I agree with that. The real question for me comes to, do you draft him in fantasy?
Oh, very good question. So Rebo and I are co-owners of a team, and we had discussed that we don't love him in fantasy because of the contract situation. It has nothing to do with the player himself. It's his health and his contract. So
It's very similar to, I think it was 2018 Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah.
Where he decided to sit out.
And then you saw James Conner emerge from that. So now the question is, who's the Colts going to have as, their guy behind Jonathan Taylor if he sits out and doesn't play?
Return of the Mac.
He tore his Achilles in the offseason, so it's not return of the Mac.
Zach Moss.
Zach Moss is on my fantasy team for a reason.
But we did see Jonathan Taylor's numbers go down at the beginning of last year, and like that running back room in general not do so well because that offensive line was also very injured. And I don't think Quentin Nelson played many games last year.
No, the Colts last year were just an absolute dumpster fire.
And so I don't know if I'm Jonathan Taylor and I have the best guard in the league on my team, in my opinion, I don't know if I can just be like, oh yeah, I'm fine with just leaving. Like I'm good to seek a trade. I don't care what his situation is, if they're not giving him money, whatever it is. I just don't see a world where like if I have a top 5 player at a position that I need, like I depend on a daily basis, it's almost impossible for me to leave.
Well, for me, yes, that's a good point, but when you look at the team as a whole, they're like a bottom 3 team in the league.
Fair.
Probably true.
And if I'm this superstar player and I know I can, do some good, win a Super Bowl even on the right team, I'm getting the hell out of there. If I don't like the way things are looking, and if I'm him, I don't, that, well, yes, you needed a quarterback, but then none of their other picks helped him. Like they didn't get any more offensive line. They didn't make any trades to pick up any more offensive line. All they have is Q. I can see what he's mad about.
If I get in a weird spot in fantasy, back to the fantasy. If I get in a weird spot in fantasy and like say I'm drafted in the beginning and Jonathan Taylor's there in like the 3rd round, I've already got a running back 1, like I'll take a chance on that.
Right.
But am I drafting him as my running back 1? Not a chance.
So
I'll let Randall do that one.
Randall.
And
or Paul.
Or Paul, yeah.
Or Paul will take Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, round 1, 2. So I looked up his ADP just so we can get an idea of like where's he actually going in real life, just so we can further talk on this subject. Right now, he is the RB8 and overall 20 is where he's being drafted. In full PPR, and then half PPR is overall number 17, running back number 6. So when you think about it, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, Josh Jacobs is supposed to be coming back.
Yeah.
They said yesterday that he's going to report back to the team, so I'd put him above. Jonathan Taylor falls at that running back 8.
I think
Would you put
situation now? You put Ramondre, even though they just signed Zeke. I don't think Zeke's going to come in and be a guy automatically. I think Ramondre is still going to get some great stuff going on.
Dustin said he's in a draft right now. He just went 30th, 12-team PPR, so that's 3rd round.
So
that's what I would
with his ADP.
Take him at.
What did I say? He's at like 20th overall. If I see him fall to 30th, I would take him. If it's a 12-team, you're at the bottom of the 2nd round. You're really close to that 2-3 turn. If you're picking close to that 2-3 turn, that means you probably
That's
either
in the 3rd round. That's mid-3rd round.
Well, not in the 12 team. Oh, 12 team. I was thinking 20th because I was just said 20th. 30th. You're picking him, mid-3rd round. You've got to take him there. You've probably already got one running back, one receiver.
I would hope.
I would hope. You're not taking him if you have 2 running backs or 2 receivers. Or no, you're definitely taking him if you have 2 receivers, right? Yeah. Depends who else is there.
Yeah.
We should have done a mock draft
I
episode.
would take ETN over Taylor right now too.
There's a few guys who are like on the same tier as Taylor.
Sure.
I would take him under his ADP. I wouldn't take him at 20 right now. But if he falls to 30, like Dustin's saying, 12-team PPR, he falls to 30, I would I would start to consider him around the 27 mark. Is where I would start to think about Jonathan
Yeah,
Taylor.
I mean,
mid-third, yeah.
if you ignore everything, like if this is just a scratch season, he's happy, not injured, his team's healthy, I would take him top 5.
Oh, if he's healthy and he's on the Colts and happy and he has a new contract, I would definitely take him in the top 4 running backs.
Right.
Sure. I think he's still like
I would have him as my running back 4 if he were healthy and
he's
ready to
5
go.
or 6 for me.
This guy.
I'm just
You were gonna say it, and I knew I was gonna say it.
I
I would hope you knew you
Chubb
said-
is yet
I don't know what I
to
say half the
show
time.
that he's going to slow down, and Derrick Henry as well.
Well, PPR matters, and Jonathan Taylor's going to catch probably 15 to 20 more passes than Nick Chubb.
There's no other running back in Cleveland now. Nick Chubb's going to have a receiving year.
I mean, they do have receivers though.
Sure. You're right. I'm
I
sure
love
they do
Reese.
have receivers.
They do. Amari Cooper,
Yeah.
Elijah
Donovan
Moore,
Peoples-Jones.
Yeah.
Donovan Peoples-Jones, David Njoku.
Now let's go through the Colts. Josh Downs,
Michael Pittman.
Ashton Doolin,
Mo Alley Cox.
Alec Pierce.
Well, Mo Alley Cox isn't there anymore.
Oof.
Oh, Jelani Woods.
Jelani Woods.
He's like 7'4". He's huge. All right. So last question. I want to ask, since we're getting semi close to time here.
Time to do a grid.
We might, but it depends how long this segment takes. So I asked y'all before we got on here, just to give you a couple minutes to think about it.
Yeah.
So not completely off the dome. I know Reese isn't off the dome. He said he was making
made
spreadsheets.
I tried, but my laptop
so
was dead.
I want him to go first.
Yeah.
So the first question I'm going to ask you is, who is a dark horse this NFL team wise? Who's a dark horse this season? Maybe a team that isn't being looked at for the playoffs that you think will make that playoff push, or even a team that always finishes maybe 6th to 7th seed that you think finally has it in them to make that Super Bowl run.
To my team, they didn't make many like a huge offseason moves or anything like that. They went out and made some different changed their wide receiver room up a bit, but the biggest thing they did was they got a new offensive coordinator, and that team is Baltimore Ravens, and I believe you agree.
Yeah, that was also my team. I peeped his phone right before this started, and I saw he had Todd Monken pulled up. And I knew that meant that we agreed for the first time in like 6 years on something. I think the Baltimore Ravens, the more this offseason festers and the more I think about it, the more I think the Baltimore Ravens have a genuine chance of making a run. The reason I say that is because it kind of reminds me of the Eagles last year. They make a coaching change. They bring back their guys, make a couple additions that make sense.
Key additions.
Key additions that make sense, and you're giving a MVP candidate level quarterback what he needs to succeed. And I think that's what the Ravens did. That's what the Eagles did. The Eagles made the Super Bowl last year. I'm not coming out and saying, yes, the Ravens are making the Super Bowl. But I think they'll give the Bengals the run for their money in that division.
The biggest thing with the Ravens, if we were to go to like a bad thing about them, is they don't have many defensive linemen left. Like they
just
used
signed
to have,
Jadeveon Clowney, though.
yes, but they
who
used
is
to
the
have
second, fun fact, PFF. We know how much PFF means in real life. Second best run graded defensive end in the past 5 years.
Yeah, that matters. But like they used to have like Calais Campbell and all these, and they used to be known for their defense. And I don't know if that defense is Super Bowl caliber, but if there is a dark horse, I do think that the Ravens have the best shot, in my opinion.
Yeah, I somewhat agree. I think the Ravens can make a playoff push this year. I think they can every year. They have the talent, especially with the addition of Odell, giving Lamar another target. Hopefully that receiving core can stay healthy for at least 1 year, because they haven't.
Very true.
And they get the D end out of Michigan back that they drafted last year that was hurt.
Oh, yes.
Agba.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do think it'll be tough for them to beat out the Bengals for a few reasons. My main reason, I think they'll be second in the division. I don't think it'll be tough to get a wild card spot at their caliber. But one of the things I see the Ravens do year in and year out is they always lose the trap games. A game where, put the house on it, they're going to win. They find a way to lose. That, and they're just running back situations just horrendous.
I think J.K. Dobbins, if he can stay healthy, can be a playmaker in this league. I really do. We haven't seen it yet because he hasn't been healthy for a single season. But he's one of those guys who truly is a very good receiver out of the backfield. And he's shown so many flashes. It's just kind of like that DeAndre Swift syndrome where you see this guy and you're like, yes, he's going to be good. He's going to be good. He's going to be good. And then he never quite makes that leap. So I'm hoping he can be. My last point on the Ravens before you move on to your dark horse is the way I judge AFC teams at this point is can they beat the Chiefs? Because that's the question at this point is can they beat the Chiefs? The Bengals and the Bills are like the only two teams who we've seen actually beat the Chiefs. And the Bills have only done it in the regular season. For me, the difference maker is legit one of my favorite players in the league is Zay Flowers. I think he is, if he were on the Chiefs, that would go crazy. He fits the Chiefs system so well. But Lamar finally having the option of having three legit receivers, because usually his second best receiver is Demarcus Robinson. But now he has a healthy Odell, Zay Flowers, and Rashad Bateman, who I think are all three legit receivers in the NFL.
Still has Mark Andrews.
Who's, undoubtedly top 3 tight end in the league, in my opinion. So, he's finally got the weapons, and if he can have a healthy backfield between J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, I think this offense is one of those ones that can compete, if not win, a shootout with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Per BaltimoreRavens.com, Gus Edwards is the starter.
Yeah.
I'll still take the Ravens. By less, but I'll still take the Ravens.
Yeah, I was just about to say, going off of the J.K. Dobbins thing, even when he was healthy, I still didn't see any really flashes out of him. He kind of just looked like a mediocre, average, run-of-the-mill running back. But moving on, my dark horse team, I've been trying to give this some thought. There's a few teams that I've whittled it down to. But overall, I could see a lot's going to hate me.
Uh-oh.
I could see the Rams making a playoff push.
A whole lot hates you so much.
They're coming back healthy. Last time we saw this team healthy, they won a Super Bowl.
Minus a quarterback.
What?
Minus a cornerback.
Cornerback.
They did lose Jalen Ramsey.
They lost Jalen Ramsey. They still have Aaron Donald. They still have Cooper Kupp. Still have Stafford. Cam Akers is supposed to continue where he left off last year. And then when you look at their division, Arizona's the worst team in the league. Seattle is a big question mark. Can they repeat what they did last year?
Yes.
I think they can.
It depends on JSN's health.
Depends on Geno's health.
He did have to have wrist surgery today. They said he'll probably miss week 1. But if he can come back healthy, I think Seattle's going to be even better than they were last year, in my opinion.
No, I agree. But then when you look outside the division, the NFC is weak.
Yeah.
So for them to find a wild card spot, I wouldn't put it past them. With a team like that, we saw what they can do. If they can do that again, I can give them a wild card spot, and I can see them making a push in the playoffs.
I don't hate it. I think it really depends. I know we say it for literally every team, but it does depend on health. Because it's one of those teams last year who went from Super Bowl winning to like a bad team. Genuinely just a bad team.
Right.
And it's because nobody stayed healthy. Stafford was out after 5 weeks. Cooper Kupp missed most of the season. Your running back situation was horrendous. Your defense, horrid. You got to pronounce the D on there. Come on. Defense couldn't stay healthy. You lose Bobby Wagner, who goes back to Seattle, and even though he's on, kind of the twilight of his career, he's still a really good player.
Yeah, he might retire after this year.
But I think, he brought a lot of locker room type of stuff to that team. So the Rams lose people, but they also gain people. So I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if they make the wild card, but I'd be really surprised if they went farther than that. All right. So we've got our dark horses. We both go Ravens. You go Rams. Last question.
We're Pirates.
Speaking about the Pirates,
Speaking
shout
of
out Paul
Pirates,
Skeens.
Paul Skeens is now in
Double
AA, a league that actually exists.
Unlike High A, not a
Same
real
with
thing apparently.
Dylan Cruz.
So
There's your Tiger update.
my last question for you guys, and I'll of course answer it as well, is who's the team that you think people are way overhyping? Like, who's that one team that everybody thinks can win a Super Bowl, everybody thinks is going to make a real run at this thing, and you just don't see it?
Okay. I'll start. The easy way out would be the Cowboys. Unless you're living in Dallas, everyone else thinks the Cowboys are always overhyped, which they are.
They're America's team. They have to be over.
I don't live in that America,
yeah.
I'll tell you that much.
I'll live in England if that's that America. But I'm going to stay in the division. I think a team that had pretty good success last season is going to do, I wouldn't say significantly worse, but I don't see them upgrading and doing better as, other people project them to. And that's the Giants.
You did say this earlier.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I just can't get behind that receiving core, if I'm being honest. It's a lot of young guys and then old-ass Sterling Shepard.
That is a really good way to... And mid Darius Slayton. Do not forget about the most of mid.
We don't have to talk about Darius Slayton.
Hey, you watch your mouth.
We
Darius
brought up
Slayton.
Lewis Kidd. We can talk about anybody.
Yeah. Don't make me go to basketball and bring up, like,
Stop.
Ty Johnson.
Okay.
Bojangles Stufakis.
Landry Shamet.
But,
Shake Milton.
yeah, going off of what I said,
All right.
I'm going to cut that out.
A little insight. What? This is live, bro.
I don't care.
Okay. Go ahead.
So, yeah, going back on what I was saying, I don't like the Giants' receiving core. It's really young besides Sterling Shepard, who's had flashes, but he's never been able to be consistently a number one guy. He's currently in the number one role, which scares me. If you're a Giants fan, I don't know how that doesn't scare you. A lot of people were expecting them to make a big receiving move this offseason, and it just didn't happen. They pick up Darren Waller, who was out all last year. I don't really like the pickup, honestly. He doesn't really fit the team in my eyes. Danny Dimes is not that guy. No matter how many times people say he is, he's not. Saquon's their only hope at this point.
While I couldn't agree less about the Darren Waller take, because I think Darren Waller is going to have a phenomenal year this year, I don't think the Giants will make the playoffs again. I think last year was kind of a one-year thing for me. That's my opinion.
That's tough.
That's what I've been saying. I don't like everyone's hyping them up, saying, "Oh, they're gonna do even better this season." They might even win the division. I don't think that's gonna happen at all. Not with that defense, especially. I didn't even get to the defense yet. It's all over the place, especially when you look at the defensive side. Like offensive side, they kind of got it together last season and was able to squeak by a few wins and push them into the playoffs. I don't think that'll be the case this year.
Yeah, last season was just full of, like, surprises for the Giants. Like, Isaiah Hodgins came out of nowhere and played phenomenally. Daniel Bellinger was their tight end last year, and he played really well. Saquon finally got back to being Saquon. And while I think Saquon will remain that way, and I think Darren Waller will be good, I think too many other teams have proven it, and too many other teams have gotten better, where the Giants kind of just, floated about.
Yeah, they in my opinion, they honestly got a little worse. They lost some key pieces on defense that they were trying to build up, especially on their front, and then their whole receiving core is just vanished, really, besides Sterling Shepard, who has been there for what feels like 10 years now.
All right. Moving on to my team.
No, you don't have any takes on the Giants?
No, I try not to think about the Giants. I think Darren Waller's going to have a great year just being a red zone target, and Saquon's going to get a lot of carries, and that's about it. So for my team, there's this big hype about how the division that they're in is now the best division in football. And there was a little bit of hype last year about it. We've mentioned this one on the pod already. I am not a fan of the Dolphins.
Bad take.
I do not think the Dolphins will make the playoffs this
Bad
year.
take.
Okay. No.
How are they ever going to score a point?
Hear me out. I think saying that they are not Super Bowl contenders is fair.
No, I don't think they're going to make the
but
playoffs.
not saying they won't make the playoffs is a little crazy, in my opinion.
You have to play
Hot take of the
the
week.
Jets and Bills twice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else they're facing, but they certainly don't have an offensive line to protect Tua. There's a reason
listen.
I'm avoiding Miami players in mock drafts lately.
I get it. But last year, Miami played games with Skylar Thompson at quarterback.
And one.
Tua couldn't stay healthy if, his life depended on it, which at one point, he he kind of looked like it did.
He looked at his hand like this.
Yeah.
And it's not like, I don't think did they lose anyone?
No.
I might be tripping. Like, they might have lost someone. But to me, I don't think they
lost Chase
anyone.
Edmonds,
Which,
who was their RB3 to finish the year.
Yeah, we get it. Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, bad pick. We remember. But I think the Dolphins are the same team they were last year, if not even better, and they made the playoffs last year without Tua.
think
With a tackle, like, their best offensive lineman's not going to play,
4 games?
4 to 6 games.
If
that can get you out of the playoffs. If your
No,
best.
no. I hear you. But I think they are good enough to make the playoffs, for sure.
Yeah. And you said the Bills and the Jets. I think they'll go 1-1 with both of those teams, just like they did last year.
Fair. But y'all asked me to bring a take.
It's a hot take, I will admit.
And
I believe it is pretty
take.
hot.
I do not think. I mean, they have great cornerbacks.
Their whole defense was great.
Although Jalen Ramsey might not play most of the year because he did get hurt. So that
we
is
are.
a good point. But then
Back to the
again,
same
they
spot.
also didn't have him last year. So is that really a difference? So there's pros and cons to literally every team. We could sit here and talk for
Right, yeah. We
10
could nitpick
hours
every
about
team.
each team
Yeah.
and break them down. I do appreciate that you brought a hot take, though, because
I don't
before
think they can make the playoffs.
2 months ago, I had the Dolphins as my Super Bowl team. And
Yeah.
I did. And
I was right there with you.
I have changed that tune.
To another AFC East team in the Jets.
No,
Wrong.
that is you.
They will not make the
That is
playoffs.
you, bud. I don't think the Jets are going to win the Super Bowl either.
I don't think they might not make the playoffs.
There's no way they don't
okay.
make the playoffs.
I think
That's a
y'all
worse
should make
take
that
than-
bet. Is some sort of I already
That's
have
a
a bet
worse take
going.
than Dolphins.
You should make some sort of bet where about the Dolphins and Jets making the playoffs. If they both make the playoffs, you push. If one does and the other doesn't, y'all have to do something.
Hot chip?
Make that bet. I don't know about hot chip. I don't do hot chip.
That's what I said, and I got
Well,
called
do you hear
wrong.
this guy?
But anyway, so my team that I think is either going to be, worse than people expect or take a step back, is a team that is currently 4th in Super Bowl odds. Currently 4th betting favorite to win the Super Bowl. A team who made a championship game last season, and that is the San Francisco 49ers.
Wow.
I think that the uncertainty at the quarterback position matters. You have Trey Lance in the preseason who looks like doo-doo. You have Brock Purdy who nothing's really come out about his health. Like, last we heard, he had to have something similar to Tommy John surgery, and then that's all we know. We don't know if he's good. We don't know how he's looking in training camp. I've tried looking it up. Haven't really seen much about him. People are assuming he's going to be the starter, and then you also have Sam Darnold, who's known for seeing ghosts out on the field. So, the uncertainty at the quarterback situation really kills it for me. I'm not trying to disrespect Brock Purdy a lot. I promise I'm not. It's the health. It's really the health. It's not his play. It's is he going to be healthy enough to play? Because Stafford had his elbow situation too, and he was playing through it and then had to get surgery on it and then didn't play for the rest of the year, and the Rams went down.
Tennis elbow.
I could absolutely see something like that happening with the 49ers, where you throw Brock Purdy out there, he's not playing to his full health, and then everything just goes down in the middle of the year. I don't think their defense took any steps back. I think that defense is still one of the best. No, their defense is still one of the best in the league. I mean, they added Javon Hargrave up the middle.
Huge.
So you have Javon Kinlaw, Javon Hargrave,
Eric Armstead.
Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead.
That's
all across the line.
insane.
You have maybe a hot take, but the best linebacker in football, in my opinion,
not a
and
hot
Fred
take. Not a hot
Warner
take.
and the at middle linebacker.
He could
And-
do everything.
Yeah, so I mean, their defense is not a question for me. I think their defense can win them games. Can they win them enough games to get them back to where they were this year? I don't think so.
So your take is that they can't make the NFC Championship game.
I don't think they'll make it out of the wild card this year. I think they will. I think them and Seattle will battle for the first in the division. And whoever doesn't win the division probably won't make it out of the round. I honestly, my opinion, Seattle is going to finish better than San Francisco this year. I just trust them a little bit more, I guess, which maybe doesn't make sense to most people, but for me it does. Their offense to me has more weapons. We're not questioning their quarterback situation. Usually doesn't turn out well. And we saw, was it 2 or 3 years ago, San Francisco went to an NFC Championship game, went to a Super Bowl, and then they had a really down year because Jimmy G got hurt, and they were starting guys like Blaine Gabbert and C.J. Beathard and Nick Mullins. I see the same exact thing happening this year. I think they have a little bit of a cool down, whether it's health or just something not clicking with the offense.
Yeah, I mean,
that's my opinion with the 49ers. I just don't think they'll make it back.
They have made the NFC playoff, the NFC Championship the past 3 seasons, and it kind of went under the radar.
Have they made it not every year for the past 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Rams.
Yeah, they did play the Rams. Yeah.
Well, no, they didn't make it the year against the Bucks, I don't believe. I think that was the Packers. They lost to the Packers in that game before.
Correct.
So they've made it 3 out of the last 4 years because they went to the one they made the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, missed the next NFC Championship, which is the year I was talking about, and then they've made 2 straight. So, 3 out of the last 4 years they've made the NFC Championship. He's doing the math in his head.
I was going to say that the offense between the linemen and the skills positions, you can just throw any quarterback out there and Sam Darnold will be good enough. But we saw in the NFC Championship game that you can't just throw anybody out there.
They got smacked when Josh Johnson was
it is Josh Johnson. I would.
Yeah, but
I'd take Sam Darnold to a whole nother caliber.
I would take Sam Darnold over Josh Johnson for sure. But I wouldn't take Sam Darnold to lead me to an NFC Championship. I just don't see that.
Yeah.
Because
if he's the quarterback the whole year.
If Jimmy G can't win you an NFC Championship or a Super Bowl with that team, Sam Darnold can't do it. And it really for me, it really depends on, does Brock Purdy have the health? And if he does he have a sophomore slump? Because we've seen it from quarterbacks before. Have that second-year slump where you ball out your rookie year, everybody's expecting you to go big, and then you just take a step back because people figure you out.
Yeah, unless you're Joe Burrow.
No, there's guys who don't take a step back. I mean, Joe Burrow is Joe Burrow. Tears his ACL and then comes back the next year and looks like an MVP candidate.
He had a slump his rookie year.
Yeah, and then, Justin Herbert is consistently a top 10 quarterback. Who?
It wasn't on Joe Burrow that he had to slump his rookie year.
No.
No,
he was dead.
His Chase Young was the reason Joe Burrow had a slump his rookie year when he tore his knee apart.
And now look at Chase Young. He can't play a game.
Can't even play. But no, that's my team, is the 49ers. So we had the Dolphins. We had the 49ers, which are basically the same teams, East and West, because they have half of the same roster from the past 3 years.
Yeah.
And then who'd you have as your not the dark horse, the
Giants.
Take a step back, the Giants. I think those are all, educated guesses for sure. The Dolphins maybe not as educated.
Sure.
No, I'm just messing with Rebo. I completely get your point. But yeah, those are our takes for the NFL season. I'm sure we'll give more once the season gets a little bit closer. Yep. We're getting close to that point where it's almost time for real football.
Right, yeah.
2 weeks from Thursday. And we will have our first regular season NFL game, which, honestly, great game to open the season with. Lions versus Chiefs. We'll definitely give our takes on what we think is going to be happening.
Someone will show their true colors. One team will win and the other team will lose, for sure.
Yeah, and I think also they're at the beginning of the game, they're going to be tied, and by the end of the game, they won't be tied anymore. So that'll be an interesting way to see how that happens.
I pray that this ends in a tie.
They're not ending in a tie. Jared Goff won't let that happen. He will either throw a touchdown with 50 seconds left or throw a pick with 50 seconds left. Jared Goff will not end this in a tie. Not my quarterback. Anything else you guys have on air that you want to get out there before we end this little spiel?
Again, just stay on the lookout. We're still working in progress. I'm doing as much research as possible on how to get the streaming set up. I know I'm going to have to do a lot of splitters, a lot of connections that are pointless to get it set up. But when it's done, it's done. We will be having our OTD Madden Connected franchise starting soon. Looking forward to that. Our lucky fan, number one fan, Dustin, will be joining us in that. Shout out, Dustin.
Heck yeah.
Getting that PS5, getting Madden.
Heck yeah.
It'll be a fun time.
It will be a fun time. And, of course, we also want to do, outside of Madden, we want to do some other things, too.
Yeah.
Like, make actual, 15 to 20-minute videos rather than always doing lives, just so it's easier to go back and watch.
Yeah, we have some things in the works.
We have some things we're thinking about. Rebo, anything you want to tell to the OTD fans out there who may not know about Rebo Hustle? Haven't been on it in a little bit.
I had it, but I forgot already. That's why I started scratching my head. But
that's the most Rebo Hustle thing I've heard all day.
Yep. And
Cut
I'm just
your
trying to
promo.
schedule a PLE, man.
Cut your promo.
We do have to schedule a PLE. Last thing before we go, obviously, don't forget about the Saints giveaway. Saints tickets for this Saturday against the Houston Texans preseason game. Real easy to enter it. Just go to the Be in the Know Twitter. Make sure you're following them as well as retweet the post that talks about the giveaway. And then, of course, follow us, Off the Dome, on Twitter. And then follow the boy, Marcelo_Unda, on Twitter as well.
Yeah.
And then you will be entered into that giveaway. Hopefully we get an OTD fan at the Saints game on Saturday. And if you do, make sure to take a picture, add us on Twitter. We'll interact with you, just like we have been with Blake Groupie.
Yep.
Want to thank everybody for watching. I had fun on this episode. Hope you boys did too. Hope everybody watching had a good time. And as always, stay active in the comments. We love it when we see Clown Car and our boy Dustin going at it.
And all the bots for Reese's shirt.
All the bots. Shout out Slam Diego. But until next time, this has been OTD. I am Redfish.
I'm Mustang.
I'm Rebo Hustle.
And we will see you next time.